Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on black pepper hosted by the CBI. My name is Tove Antonissen, and it is my pleasure to be your moderator today in the coming 1 hour, 1 hour and a half that we will talk about black pepper with you. Now, just before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about the tool we use, the GoToWebinar tool. The most important thing is we cannot hear or see you, but any questions you may have, please share them in the questions section and we will get back to you as soon as we can. There will also be some polls that we will use. They will automatically pop up and you can take part in them just by clicking on that pop-up. Let me see. The program we have today, we will start with some introductions, and then we will look into recent developments and buyer requirements in the black pepper sector. We will then zoom in, and this is again where you will have a chance to be involved interactively on specific markets. So again, we will use a poll, and I'm joined today with a great team. So we will also be sharing from European spice buyers' perspectives everything we know about the black pepper markets. So we have a pretty packed program for you today. We have a lot of good experience to be shared today. I encourage you, ask questions in the questions section, as we will be able to use them to also form this session in the way that it fits you and your needs. And without any further ado, I will now also move on to the first poll that we have for you, where we ask for your participation interactively in this session, where we would like to know, and we will then move on, of course, to introduce ourselves and who we are behind the scenes here, but we would like to know from you, are you already exporting black pepper to Europe? And you should be able to see the poll now, and you can start giving your answer. Are you exporting black pepper? And will you be looking to start exporting black pepper? Okay, I will close now and I will share the results. Can you see the result now? I hope you can see it. It says it's sharing. What we can see, the people we have in our audience today, we have 11% of you are already exporting black pepper. 61%, no, not yet, but that is quite good because we know that more than half of you are looking to start exporting, and I think this webinar will then be really useful for you. And then we have 28%, no, not a producer or an exporter, which is of course totally fine as well. Now, then we know who we have in our audience, and with that, I will hand over to CBI, Arthur Schijnhart, who will talk about CBI and share a little bit about who CBI is. So Arthur, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Tove. Let me start by sharing my screen. Can you see it? I think
yes.
so. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone in our audience, maybe even good afternoon based upon where you're located around the world. Let me start by thanking all of you for joining us today. So first of all, a very special welcome to the CBI companies that are participating in this webinar. I'd also like to mention CBI experts that collaborate with us in our market studies and our market exports coaching programs in Africa and Asia. And lastly, I would like to give a very warm welcome to the many private and public sector partners that I know that are here today as well. And for those people that do not know me, my name is Arthur Schijnhart, and I'm as program manager responsible for CBI's market research in the spices and herbs sector. And for listeners that are completely new to CBI, let me also shortly introduce to you who we are and what we do. So CBI stands for the Center for the Promotion of Imports from Developing Countries. We are a Dutch government organization and funded by the Netherlands Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It is our mission to connect small and medium-sized enterprises like yourself to the European market and to create sustainable and inclusive economic growth. The way we do this is by strengthening the sustainability of SMEs in developing countries, and we encourage exports of value-added products to Europe and to the local regions of SMEs. We help with finding practical solutions to bottlenecks in the export value chain. And one such bottleneck is limited access to market information. And that brings me to the goal of today's session. So we are, in the last 3 months of this year, organizing a number of sessions on Europe's export potential. And today, the focus is on the spices sector. And together with a panel of experts that will be introduced to you shortly, we'll explore the export potential of black pepper. So why do we do this? The main reason is transfer of knowledge. So at CBI, we do a lot of research. We have many experts working for us in the field that coach companies like yourself on a daily basis. And with these webinars, we ask them to share their best tips and practical insights with you. We hope that today's webinar will give you new ideas, inspiration, and that it will help you to take steps necessary to improve and prepare your business for your next export success. I wish you all a very good session, and now back to you, Tove.
Yes, thank you very much, Arthur. And with that, I would like to move to our speakers of today. We have, as I said, a great team. So I would invite Aleksandar and Gerwald, if you can unmute and turn on your webcams. And if Arthur can stop sharing his screen, we can have us all live in the picture. And I will start by introducing Aleksandar Jovanovic to you. He's a market researcher and consultant, and he has recently finalized the CBI study on black pepper, and he's here to share his findings with you. Aleksandar, perhaps a word from you.
Yeah, hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Aleksandar Jovanovic, as Tove already introduced me. I work for the company Autentika Global, and I am specialized for the market research for the spices and herbs and also processed fruit and vegetable sectors. For CBI, I'm writing the studies about different type of spices and including black pepper, international and European reports. So for this presentation, I will shortly introduce you to the recent findings of the European market developments regarding black pepper.
Excellent, brilliant, thank you very much. And I know you've been digging into black pepper in the past couple of weeks, so we're really looking forward to hear what you have found out. But before we do that, another very important person that we have on board today, Mr. Gerwald Kras, owner of Pepper Desk and Spice Route Sourcing, one of the most experienced and most important black pepper or pepper in general importers we have in Europe. And we're so happy that you're here today to share your practical experience, because we know you know the ins and outs. So please, if you would also like to share a word right now.
Yeah. Good morning. My name is Gerwald Kras, and I have an import company in the Netherlands for spices. So we distribute the spices to many European customers. Germany is an important country, UK. I mean, you will see that later in the discussions, these names fall. My history in black pepper goes back to 1999 when I started in India. That time I was working for what's now called NetSpice. So my experience in pepper goes back for more than 20 years, and I've been active in the supply chain in all kinds of different roles. And I'm happy to share my knowledge with you guys.
Yes, and from my part, I would again like to encourage all our listeners, you can use the question button, because both Aleksandar and Gerwald are very happy to answer the questions that you may have. But for now, I suggest we move on in the program. Aleksandar, you are up first, and you are the one who will be presenting. Gerwald will be answering questions. So Aleksandar, I will hand over the word to you, and you can present your recent findings based on the study that you have put together. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tove. I just starting to share my screen. Can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. So today we are going to talk about two topics. The first will be about the recent market trends and market requirements in Europe. And in the second part of the workshop, we will talk about some selected European markets that you would be interested in. So let me firstly start with trends. And just to remind you, on the CBI website, you can find the general trends for spices and herbs information, and you can read about more general trends. But now we are going to talk a little bit more to focus on black pepper and some of the most important trends in Europe. So the first trend that we actually would like to remind you is about sustainability. Sustainability is not a new topic. It was over the last decade and more even many European policymakers and also importers were talking about different aspects on sustainability, but finally it became actually official requests of Europe, as European Union made a sustainability strategy, which is called European Green Deal, and the aim is to make the European Union the first region in the world that will be carbon neutral until 2050. And what is important for black pepper suppliers is the part of the European Green Deal, which is called a farm to fork strategy and biodiversity strategy. And what does it mean in particular? It means that the producers of black pepper, but also many other agricultural products have to reduce usage of pesticides very significantly by 50% until 2030. And we are already aware that every year the European Union is making new limits for different types of pesticides. And also another idea is actually to increase the organic production in Europe, but we forecast that actually it will be automatically mean that consumers will search for more organic products, also including spices, also including black pepper in their daily use in supermarkets and also by food industry. Another important aim is to reduce carbon emission, which means introduction of new good agricultural practices, etc. Another issue is the introduction of new sustainable packaging, as many spices are now exported and also packed into plastic packaging. Plastic usage is going to reduce also significantly. For the retail sector, there will be new introduction of the new labeling systems for consumers to be better informed about the food they eat, about the origin of food, about how sustainability is produced. And altogether, it means that it is very possible that in the recent future, we will see more certification requests by the European buyers. And what does it mean actually exactly when we talk about sustainability certification? Until recently, one of the most important certification was actually fair trade, focusing more mainly about social and ethical impact, and maybe Rainforest Alliance, focusing on the preservation of forest resources and also some other aspects. But now we think that we will see more and more different types of certifications regarding the sustainability. So the first one, which already started, is the certification about reducing carbon emission. And we have already a couple of those used in Europe, like a verified carbon standard or My Climate, for example, that you can see on the slide. Another one is already mentioned, the Rainforest Alliance, but we see now introduction of certification regarding the bio-based and recyclable packaging. For example, OK bio-based by TÜV. Also, we have certification schemes and labeling schemes regarding social and ethical impact, like fair trade, also SMETA by SEDEX, organic and new pesticides-free labels. And we also have kind of general certification, which are covering more than one aspect, like planet proof, for example, it is one. Also, we see that several European retailers are introducing their own sustainability certification. And one new development, which is not still widely applied, is certification about environmental impact on the retail packaging. On the top of the screen on the right, you can see kind of eco score, which is under discussion. We already have a Nutri-Score in many European countries. It is the certification labeling, actually informing consumers about the nutrients in food, etc. And now we see another new labeling informing consumers about how this product is impacting environment and general how sustainability is produced. So this is the kind of very general trend. And when we talk more specifically about black pepper, there are already several initiatives to produce black pepper more sustainably. One of the important sustainability issues in black pepper production involve the use of soil fertilizers, irrigation water, pesticide residues. Also, depending on the country, the production of black pepper involves sometimes labor issues affecting women, migrant and child labor, etc. So there are several initiatives. Most of them are now focused on the good agricultural practices and integrated pest management, leading to the reduced use of pesticides and better managing of the pepper crops. There is a sustainable spices initiative already existing for the several years, let's say, and also active in black pepper producing countries. And just for illustration, I wanted to mention like three initiatives from the European and international companies. The first one is from Olam International, which is currently, we can say, the largest producer of black pepper in the world, active in Vietnam and Brazil. And on their own plantations, they are already using a digital integrated smart agricultural system. This system is using weather stations to predict the appearance of black pepper diseases, like, for example, Phytophthora, which is really affecting the plants. And with this system, they can, for example, timely predict how and when to apply different type of protection, like different type of pesticides, etc., and to use the optimum level of that. It is just one part. The system is much bigger. Another one is sustainability pepper program is Vietnam by the Ned Spice, which is one of the largest black pepper traders in Europe. And the company is, for example, it launched a rainforest certification program for a very large number of producers in Vietnam, and the program is still going on, and the number of certified producers is increasing. And the third example is for the Dutch company Verstegen, which launched together with the Indonesian governmental and European also partners like like Dutch space agency. They launched the application which is called Spice Up. This application is made aimed actually for Indonesian producers of black pepper, and you can see a very small illustration on the screen about different tools that producers can use. This application, for example, uses the geomapping and satellite imaging and a lot of weather information also to inform about the best agricultural practices in different regions. So we can, it is expected that even up to 100,000 black pepper farmers in Indonesia can use it. And also to increase transparency of the black pepper supply chain, the application is showing the prices throughout the whole chain, also helping farmers and traders to have better insights and to be more transparent in the trade. And also, apart from the international European initiatives, we have also some local initiatives. For example, one of the most famous comes from India, from the company which is called Peer Made Development Society, which is more famous by the acronym PDS. in trade, which support small, marginal, and tribal farmers. And throughout the years of effort, PDS became actually the one of the most significant exporters of organic spices, including black pepper, from India. So those are just examples of trends. And if you agree, I can move to another topic, which is market requirements. And after that, we can answer some of your questions, and Gerwald also can add some from his own experience. One before we move to requirements, there is another trend that we can see. It is value-added processing in black pepper, and one interesting development is the use of piperin, which is the component of black pepper, as most of you already know, responsible for the pungency of black pepper. But actually, it is used also as a food supplement because it is recognized that piperin is enhancing the absorption of the other supplements by the human body. When you use the piperin together with the main supplement in food, the quantity of this supplement is enhanced. And for example, very frequent use is in turmeric, which is another spice also, which is becoming very popular in Europe with a lot of health claims during sales. And when we talk about market requirements, I will focus about some recent changes in Europe, but also in the later part of presentations, you can hear more from the first person view of the traders, what are the quality and the requirements, but I will just underline a couple of those which are important for the European and also international traders. The first one is, of course, contaminants regulation. And the first request, which many of you know, is the cleanliness specification. For European market, usually you need to have something like 99.90 some percent cleanliness of your exported black pepper. And usually, importers use either a European Spice Association quality minima rules or the American Spice Trade Association rules, ASTA. Microbiological contaminants are one of the big issues, especially regarding salmonella. And because of that, because of very frequent appearance of salmonella from black pepper of Brazil, there is still official border control, meaning that each second shipment of like 50% of all shipments from Brazil coming to Europe needs to be customs control in laboratories for the presence of salmonella. And because of salmonella and also other microbiological contaminants, heat treatment is currently, we can say, almost the only one acceptable solution for the European importers. Still, European Union regulation allow use of irradiation, but irradiation is actually not very favored solution for European traders. Also, use of fumigants to kill insects and also some other microbiological organisms is not very favored. Also, the usage is very limited. For example, methyl bromide and ethylene oxide are banned in Europe, and but still in the official controls of the food safety inspectors across Europe, ethylene oxide can be found in some of the spices. So one very good advice is just to check it and not to use fumigants which are banned in Europe. As I already mentioned, there is a big pesticide residues movement of the limits in Europe, and many of pesticides are already withdrawn from the market. And I am mentioning on the website, on the slide, a couple of important examples. Also, mycotoxin level, like aflatoxins and ochratoxin A is an important part of the product specification. Most of the traders and producers already know that, but what is important to know that ochratoxin A level are currently under review. So maybe we can expect in the near future some changes also, but we will see. What is important to know is that new limits for heavy metals, actually specifically lead, are set in August 2021. So you need to be in line when checking your black pepper residues in laboratory. And one very big issue which is discussed in Europe is allergen cross-contamination, because there is frequent appearance of allergens found in black pepper. Usually contamination appears because of the usage of the same storage and processing facilities for allergens and for non-allergen spices. Also, contamination can appear because of the usage of the same containers during transport, etc. And PAHA, polyclinic aromatic hydrocarbons, are also important contaminant to be aware of. Regarding black pepper, for example, when we talk about product composition, it is important for producers of dried green peppercorns to be aware that sulfur dioxide as a color preserving additive is not allowed in the EU. It is important to underline because Codex Alimentarius standard still mentioned sulfur dioxide as a allowed additive, but for Europe it is not allowed. So in order to maintain the good green color of peppercorns, you must use another processing solutions like tunnel drying and control temperature, etc., but not preservatives. Also, there is increasing food inspection control on, let's say, food fraud, kind of criminal in spices. But it is not very frequent, but still sometimes happen, especially in the powder black pepper, when food criminal, let's say, are mixing grounded pepper with buckwheat, coffee bean skins, etc. And about the quality requirements, I think it is just enough to mention what are the main, but I think that our consultants and importer, Poul and Gerwald, will tell you more about specific issues. As I already mentioned, the cleanness and purity is the very important one. Size is of peppercorns another one. So you need to have at least to invest into some cleaning equipment and grading equipment to make your offer better into different categories. Also, for preparing content is important, but it is more important for the processors and producers like black pepper oil. Ash content, moisture, essential oils, and mesh size are some of the basic requirements. So I think this will be enough for the quick introduction about developments on requirements. So, Tove.
Thank you very much, Aleksandar. And yes, we can tell that you have been digging into black pepper in the past couple of weeks, and that there is a lot going on, I would say, as well. We have a few questions coming in for you. But before that, as you already suggested, let's hear from Gerwald also. So if you would like to join us with your webcam and your audio, Gerwald. Because we heard a lot about what's going on now, sustainability, sometimes leading to certification, a lot with requirements, and you are importing, so you see this, and we know in the audience we have participants who are already exporting and the majority looking to start exporting. So from your experience and knowledge, what would be, based on these topics, what would you like to share with our audience on these topics right now?
Yeah, what I can mention as an importer, I mean, we have regulations to follow. So we look first always at what we call the critical control points, and that's also mentioned by Arthur. And for us, the main 4 critical control points are the mycotoxins, the pesticides, the salmonella, and the PAX. These 4 are critical. Heavy metal might become number 5 in the near future. Allergens is important, but first of all, whatever is being exported to the European Union should meet the requirements. If it does not meet the requirements, the goods needs to be re-exported from Europe, and that's very expensive with today's freight rates. So the first thing is it should be compliant. If it's not compliant, you can't ship it to Europe.
Yeah, that seems to be a very basic point, and thank you also for sharing this. I will point out in between all the material you hear today. The session is recorded, and you will get the slides, because I know we mention a lot of facts, but you can look it up afterwards also. And of course, the study that Aleksandar has put together will be available as well. Now, Gerald, just one more question before we turn to the audience question, because you also hear about sustainability, because these were the really critical ones, and sustainability and the EU New Green Deal, etc. Do you also see that happening in the field?
Yeah, but what we see happening there is definitely focus on sustainability, and a lot of customers are struggling. How do we, first of all, what's the norm in sustainability? Because you have different norms. And the other thing is, I mean, how do you get started? Because it's not so easy. But what we see happening with the Green Deal, by example, organic spices is definitely growing in demand. And we see companies who start in organic products, and they are successful. Because the buyers can afford to pay a higher price for the products. And if it is for conventional product, then it's always more competitive driven. People sell on price, and that's always a challenge.
Exactly. Well, excellent. And let's now take a couple of minutes to answer our audience's question. And I see we have a few of the questions relate to packaging. And one to me sounds quite straightforward. What kind of sizes are we looking for when we look for packaging sizes? Maybe Aleksandar, I can point this one to you.
Yeah, okay, but of course it is even more maybe better for Gerald. I think
you can pass it on.
Yeah, but it is just to say generally that pepper is mostly exported in sealed polyethylene bags, which are covered by paper bags or placed in the carton boxes. This is the general type, and the size, of course, depends very much on the requirements, but this is very often like 25 kilos. And what is very maybe interesting to mention that in some European countries there is a limit for the weight that the workers in the factories can lift. So in some countries you can find like a limit of the 20 kilos. So it is also needs to be agreed with your buyer. And Gerald, maybe you can tell more.
Yeah, what's very important about packaging, and that's a real struggle for us if we import from overseas countries. Migration test. Is the packing material suited for the EU market? Migration, I mean, we talk about moshmoa, we talk about all other kind of contaminations. I mean, packing material is one of the contaminants. So if you really look at packaging, go for the right packaging, and go for packaging which is approved for the EU market, and that's very tough to find overseas.
And where can you find out that? We have one question also saying, where I lost it now because there was another one coming in, but if you don't have PE liners, because it has to be kept airtight, that's the one that you are mentioning right now, that you have to go for the approved EU market packaging. Right.
Yeah, but also there was a question about polyethylene, because I mentioned in the previous, one of the main trends was actually to remove the plastic from the trade. And currently we see a lot of new solutions inside Europe. I don't know what to mention. Quite a lot is not still so much focused on spices, but for example, for drinks. So people can see that like a caps needs to be attached to the bottle in the very near future. For example, the straws for drinks are already forbidden, so they need to be made from plastic. They need to be made of other materials. And also we can expect that also that can move for the export bulk packaging. Now there are a lot of new developments. So of course we still polyethylene is still the main used material for the export of spices because it keeps them airtight. But I think that some new solutions are already appearing in the research and development companies. In Europe, so in the near future, I think that we will see new solutions. For I mean, someone who asked this question is need to be aware that it will come in the future, but it's still in this moment, it's not any a specific rule that forbids to pack black pepper as it is already packed in the polyethylene boxes. And okay.
I would like to add something if possible. Most of the packaging we receive from, let's say, less developed producers overseas are basically the polywoven bags, the PP bags. That's a woven bag, and that also allows the product to breathe inside. Yeah. So if a product is put on the water and it is not a processed, steam sterilized, cleaned pepper, then the PP bags are a very good solution, because if the product is shipped a little bit too wet, it can breathe and it is best for the product. If you put it in a closed bag and the product is not dried enough, then within the bag you get mold formation. Yeah. So for the less developed exporters, the PP bags are the best. And when you are a proven export business and you have all your safety programs in place, you add value by ground cracked pepper, yeah, then you need other kind of packaging. For the paper packaging without a lamination, you have a big risk of mosh moa, mineral contamination, and it is because the paper which is being used is often recycled paper with ink rest in it, and that's actually not suitable for the EU market. So you need to have paper which is newly made and in the right way produced.
Excellent, brilliant, really practical tips shared here, so I hope you're all listening in. I will do one more question and then we will move on to the next part of the presentation that Aleksandar will give us, and where we will ask for your input again. But it's an interesting one. I'll just read it out loud for you, Aleksandar and Gerwald. Is there a list of approved or recommended laboratories for performing the tests as mentioned, that you mentioned in your presentation, to meet the market requirements? And is there a holy grail or established test codes for the same to avoid testing labs exploiting growers by misleading tests? So basically, how do we go about making sure that the requirements are met? Are there tests that you can, or a list of test laboratories that can be used? Again, looking for practical information here, I think.
Yeah, maybe Gerwald also can say from his own experience, but I think I just to say that, for example, yeah, each laboratory needs to be accredited actually by ISO 17025 standard, but it is still sometimes not enough, because it depends on the number of tests that laboratory can perform. It depends on how advanced is the equipment. And one of the problems that I heard from and Gerwald can confirm that, is actually that for example, when you test on pesticides, sometimes European rules ask you to do test on like more than 500 different types of pesticides, and sometimes local laboratories cannot do so much tests. And yeah, maybe you can search for the very well recognized laboratories like I don't know, Eurofins, for example. It's one of the most important. But Gerwald, can we also say?
Yeah, I can add something. I mean, to start with, it is often the final buyer who insists on the usage of a certain laboratory. And Eurofins and GBA are, by example, laboratories which are often recommended by buyers. What also makes sense is that you have international laboratories who are present in the country. I mean, in Vietnam and in India, and Eurofins is a laboratory which is present in a lot of these countries. I mean, SGS is also present, but SGS is less used for pesticides. So it depends a little bit on what you're going to test. The most important thing in testing is always, how do you draw the sample? That's the most critical. If you use a wrong sample, if you use bad input, you get bad output. So we always look at the usage of laboratories, but look at how do you draw a sample. And there are certain protocols for that. If you look at the European Union, they have a certain protocol for taking the sample. And that is, we also have the ISO 948 sample method, but that's actually not the one which should be used in Europe. In Europe, you have to draw 10 kilos of a product, and you have to at least sample 10% of the bags. It's not very practical from overseas to draw 10 kilos of samples. Yeah, but I would recommend look carefully at how do you want to draw a sample. If the sample is drawn by a laboratory, it's independent. So if you prefer to have an independent outcome, ask a laboratory to draw the sample. You can send the sample to different laboratories of choice of buyers, and then at least the perspective of the business, I mean, what the buyer expects from you and what you want to deliver, at least that's in line with each other.
Thank you very much. Again, very practical. And we will move on, but there's just one question, I think, Gerald, to you that is might be short to answer, I'm not sure, but we get what is the maximum quality certificate you need? Because this is very much about still the certificates and requirements. Is there, in your view, sort of a maximum quality certificate?
I mean, not really. It just depends a little bit on where do you stand in your processing. We can import pepper from countries which are just at the start of getting the pepper industry and have it cleaned and sterilized here in Europe. So we can process semi-processed pepper. And for everyone who wants to export, you have to look carefully where do you want to export, because you might not have the processing equipment in place. Your product might be fair, let's say fair average quality, but not suitable for certain retail companies. So look very well what you can, what's your product, how do you process it, and to whom do you target to export your products. We might all know the companies are well known, but they might not be interested in your product. You might find someone who is in between and can help you with improving your process, can help you with giving advice, and can help you growing your business slowly, so that you can make some money, and with the money you can invest in cleaning machinery and the end buying a steam sterilization machine.
Yeah, brilliant, excellent. Thank you again for sharing your practical view. And now we've heard a lot from Aleksandar, we heard a lot from Gerald. Very interesting and a lot of information shared so far. But I will now again. Sorry, Aleksandar.
Can I just give one very small tip? On the CBI website, there is one market information. There is a study which is called tips to do business in the spice and herb sector, and there is one tip regarding specifically how to send your samples, and which Gerald pointed out. So I invite listeners to check it, because it is explained in the step-by-step process.
Yes. That is a good one. So indeed, on the spices and general sector page, you can find tips on how to do business with European buyers. Good one, Aleksandar. Thank you very much for adding that one. And let's now turn to listen to our participants again. So we've listened to Aleksandar and Gerald. Now we want to hear from you, because Aleksandar, in his research, his study on the European market for black pepper, he has looked into some of the markets, some of the countries. As you know, Europe is not one single market in terms of preferences and the role they play in trade. And perhaps you listeners have a preference which markets you would like to learn more about. And that's our second and also our last poll that we have today. So you will see it pop up. I will launch the poll now. We will give you a couple of minutes again to fill it in, and you decide about which markets Aleksandar will share more in his second presentation today. And I can see you're eagerly voting, so we will leave it open a bit longer. And I think although it is close, a close call it will be, I think most people who wanted to vote have voted, meaning I will close the poll and I will share our results so that Aleksandar also knows what he will be presenting. We had the options Germany, the UK, France, the Netherlands and Poland. And the two top ones here clearly are the Netherlands and Germany, with quite a close call there with the UK. But Aleksandar, I think this is clear to you and you know what to do when you see this result, right?
Yeah.
So I will make you presenter again. Please go ahead.
Okay, but do you see my screen now again? Or
We still only see your poll. Maybe I need to take that one off. And now we'll make you presenter again. Let's see. No, you are presenter. So now you should be able to share a screen. Sorry about that one. The poll was hanging in the air a bit longer. Yes, now we can see it. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Just before I move to the first market, which is Germany, just to show you the general import statistics of Europe. As you see from these slides, we have the 6 largest importers: Germany, after that United Kingdom, the Netherlands, France, Poland, and Spain. But when we talk about estimated consumption, there is a little bit difference in this ranking. Because as you see, the Netherlands is the 3rd largest importer, but it is maybe the 5th largest consumer, because the Netherlands is, of course, a very famous trade hub for all spices, also including black pepper. So firstly, we will start with the Germany, as it was you asked more about Germany according to the poll results. Germany, firstly, as you can see, the import is it shows kind of fluctuation, but it does not mean that demand is fluctuating. Demand is quite stable because the black pepper is the most famous spice, called king of spices in Europe, and this fluctuation actually is result of the fluctuations in the production volumes in the main supplying countries, which are obviously Vietnam and Brazil. In Germany, reached import of 34,000 tons in 2019, and after that import a little decrease in 2020. But generally, we can say that this 33,000 tons is still quite big. And another interesting characteristic of Germany is that Brazil is the main supplier. So actually, Germany is the only one country in Europe where Brazil is the main supplier, while in all other countries, Vietnam is the main supplier. The main reason for that is actually the quite a large German activities in Brazil, because one of the largest companies in Germany, not actually one of the largest, but the largest company in Germany is Fuchs Group. Officially, name of this company is DF World of Spices, but they're more famous by the name Fuchs. And Fuchs is really dominating the German market. The company is leading the market, having the most share, and they started their own operations and sourcing. They have own sourcing company also in Europe, in Brazil, and they established operations like 30 years ago. Because of that, they developed a lot of sourcing operations in Brazil, and they source most of the black pepper from there. When you know that this company is really dominating the supply in Germany, it is obviously that this is very, although a large market.
Wacht even. Hallo Vivian. Hallo.
Yeah. I hear something, but Can I continue?
Yes, please do, Aleksandar. I think it was one unmuted, but I think that's sorted. Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Hello.
So the Fuchs Group, because they are dominating the German market, it is obvious that...
Excuse me, Vivian and Paul, could you please unmute? Thank you.
Oh, stop. Okay, stop. Yeah, okay.
So, sorry for this technical interruption. I think that I can continue. This means that actually the Germany is very competitive market. When you have one leader who is making the most of the market share, it is not really easy for that leader to change the already existing supplier, because the big German companies, Fuchs, but also other traders, have already established a long-term relationship with the Blackpepper producers around the world. So one of the main tricks is how to, for the new emerging suppliers, how to persuade the German buyers to switch and to buy some quantities from you. Germany is also famous by very high quality and inspections, and the most established suppliers to Germany are certified mostly with the IFS certification, because IFS food safety certification is more preferred in Germany than in other countries, let's say. And another opportunity is actually to offer organic products, because Germany is the largest organic market in Europe. Germany has already several types of specialized organic retail chains, like, for example, Alnatura, DM, Biomarkt, etc. And all of those chains has only organic products, including Blackpepper in their offer. And also each of the large retail chains in Germany has big offer of own private label brands. And when we talk about the brands, most of the Blackpepper actually in quantity terms is sold under quite competitive prices for the retail segment by big discounters like discounter chain Lidl or Aldi Sud, Aldi Nord, etc. And Fuchs, for example, is also is also the one of the biggest packer for private labels, but also they have own brands. For example, Fuchs is one brand name, the same as the company, but also there is Ostmann and Bio Wagner, like organic brand of Fuchs. What is interesting to say that Cambodia is gaining market share in Germany, still not with big quantities, but for example, in 2016, Cambodia exported only 45 tons, but now they export more than 1.1 thousand tons. So this is important to say that this country is gaining market share. I already mentioned a couple of private labels, but it is important to know that although we can see the labels in the food stores, etc., that this retail segment is only part of the market. Actually, it is a smaller part of the market compared to food processing and food service. And in food processing market, we know that Germany is the largest meat processing company in Europe. So there are some specialized spice mixing companies like AVO or companies specialized for supplying of the meat industry like OSC Food Solutions, which are using Blackpepper for ingredient in their final mixes for meat they produce. And also food service, of course, it is impacted now because of COVID-19 pandemic, and there is limited. There was, especially in the last year, there was a lot of lockdowns, closure of the restaurants, etc. But now the market is recovering, and meaning that food service is again becoming the second largest user of Blackpepper. And there are companies like Metro Cash and Carry who are specialized for offering. They're also importing, but also they're specialized for offering of Blackpepper to the food service sector, which means not retail packaging, but also not bulk packaging, but something in between. They use like a packaging of 300, half kilo, 1 kilo, etc. Fast food in Germany is a very large sector. There are a lot of national restaurants, but also there is a lot of strong international offer, and especially strong is Turkish cuisine with a lot of Turkish ethnic fast food chains selling kebab, etc. Also, all those fast food restaurants are using also pepper as one of the ingredients. When we talk about retail segment, I already mentioned that the largest shares, we don't know exact numbers, but the largest share are held by the private label. Leading brands are by Fuchs. And it is interesting that Fuchs is present in all regions of Germany, right, really dominating the market. But we also have a couple of other companies like Alba, Hardcorn, Nebona, etc. But some of those other brands are present only in some regions of Germany and not in whole Germany. Also there is, we can say, in the deeper segmentation of the retail segment, we also see some specialist high-end shops. And the most famous is Alfons Schumbeck, which is named after one very famous German celebrity chef. But it is not owned by him. It is the high-end retail spice specialist shop. Also, it is owned by Fuchs. So it is very quickly about Germany as a main market. But I can now move to the Netherlands, and after that you can ask the questions for both countries.
Yes, and while you look up the Netherlands, Aleksandar, I will just quickly inform that we have the privilege of having yet a third speaker with us today after this presentation from Aleksandar. I will introduce him shortly, but just so you know, so we have a packed program. We will still try to have as many questions and answers also for our excellent speakers today. But over to you again, Aleksandar, so you can continue your presentation.
Okay, yeah, so I finished with the Netherlands, with Germany, and now just to mention that the Netherlands is the third largest importer of black pepper in Europe, and actually it is famous as a trade hub, meaning that most of the imported black pepper, it is estimated actually that 75% of imported quantities are re-exported to another countries. Sometimes it involves additional processing like repacking, heat treatment, etc. But sometimes it is just bulk exported. The market is increasing actually, and currently the Netherlands imports around 14,000 tons, and the record was in 2019 when the country imported 15,000 tons. As you see, Vietnam is the leading supplier to the Netherlands, followed by Brazil, Indonesia, and Spain also as a re-exporter. When I say that Vietnam is the leading supplier, we all need to be aware that this doesn't mean that all pepper which comes from Vietnam is of Vietnamese origin, because Vietnam, because of its large processing facilities, is also importing black pepper from surrounding countries, also from Cambodia, from other countries, Indonesia, and from other black pepper producing countries in Asia mainly. And so actually when the pepper importing from Vietnam is not always 100% produced in Vietnam, but sometimes it is a mix of the different origins. When we talk about Netherlands, because of the large trading activities, there is always interest from Dutch traders to look for new sourcing destinations. So now we see import in still small quantities, but we can see imports from Tanzania, from Ecuador, from Madagascar, which are not so present in Europe, but the Dutch countries are looking for the ways how to diminish dependence of the only from Vietnam only. Sustainability, as you already mentioned, is a very important trend in the Netherlands. Netherlands is also home of the company who established the Sustainable Spice Initiative, and Dutch companies are very present in sourcing countries. So, for example, NetSpice is very much present. NetSpice is actually the leading supplier of black pepper in the Netherlands, and the company has its own processing facilities in Vietnam. And another company I mentioned in the trends section is Verstegen, which has also own activities in Indonesia. Similar to Germany, when we talk about retail segment, the local market is again dominated by private label suppliers. On this slide, you can see that the main private label are Albert Heijn, H label, and also another one is Jumbo. Those two retailers accounts for the most of the food trade, not only spices in Germany, and also Aldi has some good market share. They have another private label. The leading independent brands, when we talk about retail, are Verstegen and Euroma. But also we have quite some brands from other countries. For example, in the black pepper stores, you can find Drogheria, which is an Italian brand, which is owned by McCormick, one of the largest spice companies in the world. Also brand Santa Maria, which is recognized brand headquartered in Sweden and Scandinavia, and also famous in Scandinavian countries. Also brand Kerala, which is a Belgian brand by the company ISFI, and several others. Like in Germany, there are also small segment of the specialized shops. I just mentioned one here. And we have quite developed trade. So aside from NetSpice, which has own product in Vietnam, we have Pepper Desk. Actually, Gerwald is a representative of Pepper Desk, who is specialist paper important, but also some other companies like Katz International, BSC Foods, Euroma, which is brand, but also it is trader, especially after Euroma acquired Intertaste 2 years ago, which was one of the largest also traders, etc. And also, what is interesting in the Netherlands, we have processing companies. For example, companies which are offering heat treatment, heat sterilization services for the companies who are not equipped with this equipment, because heat and steam sterilization is quite expensive for the small producers. So it is possible actually to sterilize your black pepper inside Europe. And also, there are specialized spice mixing companies in the Netherlands which are making the customized mixes for different segments of the market. So I hope this summarizes the main findings about the Netherlands and Germany. So we can continue, and Tove, you can invite participants to ask questions, etc. Gerwald also to comment.
Yes, thank you very much, Aleksandar. And as I just mentioned, I have the good news that we first experienced some technical problems for our third speaker today, but we have the opportunity, I hope, to have him here right now, calling in a bit improvised, but seeing his presentation will be very valuable. I propose that we first let Poul Wiertsema take the word, and then we will do an overall Q&A afterwards. So thank you very much, Aleksandar. I'm switching the order a bit, only because we now managed to get Poul on the line. So I will start sharing my screen, actually, and invite Poul to present himself. Poul, can you hear us?
Yes, Tove, thank you very much for the introduction, and I like to do my presentation, but I need your help because I'm only connected by phone. So you have to how do you call it? Flap over my presentation and to show it to the guests, because I don't have a connection through internet, only by phone. Yes.
Yes, I am now showing the slides, and we see your name, Poul Wiertsema, on the screen. Poul Wiertsema,
Excellent.
just to introduce you, is from Spice and Advice. He has an extensive experience in the spice sector, has worked as a strategic buyer, and today offers consultancy services on how to transform supply chains to become more innovative and sustainable. That is my short introduction to you, Poul, and then over to you. And I think due to time constraints, perhaps we can be quite brief, because we have a lot of questions from the audience also to you, all of you experts speaking today.
Okay, I will keep it as short as possible then, and Aleksandar has also, and Gerwald have explained already a lot, so I will go through it rather quickly. I will do my best. Okay, next slide, please. In my opinion, as a buyer, as a spice buyer in the last 14 years at Intertaste and Euroma, I think there are 4 critical success factors: quality, price, supply, and differentiation. Quality about legal aspects, buyer application requirements, and price about conditions should be market compliant, of course, and supply reliability and flexibility, very important as well, and differentiation. What makes your pepper special, or how can you make your pepper special for a European buyer? Next slide, please. Legal requirements. A lot has been said already about that, so I will go rather quickly through it. But European law, really, it's mandatory by European law that supply chain transparency is there. So a buyer in Europe needs to know where the product is coming from. And there needs to be food safety hazards control in the supply chain. This is all checked by the EFSA, the European Food Safety Authority, and they make the recommendations to Brussels. And main hazards are, as said already, pesticides, agrochemical residues of agrochemicals, microbiological residues, mycotoxins, etc. So, next slide, please. Quality according to buyers' application requirements, also very important. Of course, buyers will ask you, how do you control your quality? What kind of system do you have in place to control it? BRC, GS, or IFS, or any other system? And often they will ask for a certification. How is it audited, and who has approved it? Besides it, it's, in my opinion, very important to ask as a supplier to Europe for the technical data sheet or the product specification, in which the buyer is stipulating very clearly what the cleanliness, what the physical and chemical aspects should be, what the microbiological aspects should be about the product you supply to him. You can imagine when you supply a pepper for grinding, the quality can be different than when it's a pepper which is needed to pack in glass for consumers. So, and always ask your buyer, and it has been mentioned already, which aspects should be checked by an external laboratory, and what should be shown on the certificate of analysis. Next slide, please. So the major risks are pesticide residues, and we know from Vietnam there has been major problems in the last 10 years, and the microbiological issues with salmonella, for instance, from Brazil, but also from other countries. And the advantage with salmonella is that it can be solved by heat treatment, and pesticides residues, it's a major problem. Then product has to be returned or sold somewhere else, as Gerwald already mentioned. So my recommendation as a buyer was always, please send a very carefully drawn pre-shipment sample of each batch in advance, so the quality department can check the sensory aspects of it, the taste, the size, the color, etc. And the analytical part should be tested by, the certificate of analysis should be done by an external laboratory, like Eurofins is very famous of that, to make sure that there is no discussions about the values and the product is within the technical data sheet requirements. If not, and you have a problem at the EU border, the authorities will check your container, and you will be mentioned in the RASEF, the Rapid Alert System for Food and Feed in Europe, which is an open portal, and everybody can see the goods which are rejected at the European border. So it's important to avoid that. Next slide, please. Price. I'm not going to say a lot about it, but I will just quickly mention, in my opinion, it's quite important to show some transparency in price. What is the raw material part? What is the processing part? And what is the transport part? And in particularly the last year, you have seen that transport costs to Europe increased tremendously. So when you have transparency, some transparency in the main cost drivers, then European buyers understand better why prices increase. Of course, Incoterms, I'm not going to talk a lot about it, but who is taking which risk and which costs is very important in the supply chain. And of course, it should be stated clearly in a contract with all the details about lead time, which documents should be supplied, etc. Next slide, please, Tove. Price and market compliance. It's, of course, every quality has its price and it should be in balance. So please follow market prices quite well. And the international pepper community is showing daily prices of commodity peppers, which is a guideline, of course. And it's the most important part in a good cooperation with European buyers, in my opinion, sharing your market information and your market intelligence. So don't tell a customer that pepper increased by 20%, but tell a customer that your expectation is that prices will increase in the near future, so he can anticipate in time and doesn't get surprised. Next slide, please. Supply and reliability and flexibility. I mean, we all know that climate change has major impact on the crops of spices. We know we have had harbor strikes in the past. We have had corona restrictions in the last year. And we see a lack of containers at the moment. So these are all problems in the supply chain which have to be solved very carefully, and which you have to show some reliability and flexibility in supply, because buyers in Europe want their product in time. And my recommendation as a buyer was always to do dual sourcing. Don't source your pepper only from Vietnam, but also from other origins, or only from Brazil. So you have more safety in supply, and make sure you have a safety stock in Europe, so you don't run into problems, because supermarkets shelves should not be empty in Europe, and supermarkets will make a big claim when you cannot supply. So it's important to have safety stocks. For instance, with a trader like Pepper Desk, who will keep stock for you in Europe and is able to supply just in time. Next slide, please. Differentiation. What makes your pepper special? It's very important to find out together with your European buyer what's important and how can you differentiate your pepper from the competition. In the last 10 years, I have personally been very active with sustainable pepper, with Sustainable Spices Initiative, which is really becoming a big success and more or less becoming already standard. Pepper should be sustainable, because large buyers do not want to involve with child labor. They do not want to involve with environmental issues. This should be covered, and sustainable is a very good way to differentiate yourself with pepper. Also, organic is, of course, an increasing popular market. Make sure you comply with the EU legislation, and it's very important to look at. There are many other ways you can differentiate yourself: by cleaning your pepper better, by heat treating your pepper better, by for instance, calibrating your pepper. So there are always ways to improve your pepper and to make it better according to the requirements of the European market, so you can differentiate yourself. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. I have made my presentation rather quickly, as asked by Tove. And if you have any questions, please let us know.
Thank you very
Tove.
much.
Yeah.
Yes, Thank you very much, Paul. It was indeed impressive, and I am so happy also because time management was beautiful, and I think you summarized many of our points and added from your perspective also to the topics that have been discussed. And I'm happy to share we do have time to tackle some of the many questions that we have received from our audience. So I would like to invite Paul, please stay online, and Aleksandar and Gerald, if you
Yes.
can again unmute and join with your videos. We first listened to Aleksandar sharing from the European side what is going on. And I would now actually like to turn it, not really turn it around a bit, but just looking at some of the questions we get from our participants who are mainly producers, of course, in developing countries. We have some specific on Sri Lanka, and I know, Gerald, you can probably share some on that, but I will read one to you that I think will be interesting to many and also touches upon what Paul was just saying. So small producers and exporters can supply single origin pepper, which can be traced back to individual farms. This pepper also has special aromatic properties. How can we bring this pepper to the European market when most importers never reply to emails and usually only buy from companies like Olam and Nedspice, etc.? So basically a practical question, how can you compete as a small producer when you know you have something good to offer?
Shall I answer or not?
Or Gerald, if you like, one of
Or
you.
Gerald, maybe. Yeah. Gerald, do you want to answer?
Is this related to is this related to Sri Lankan pepper or in a general question, general origin?
This is a general one, and then we can do Sri Lanka if you can add something on that one, because that one we have had specific questions. That is the CBI program also. Yeah.
I will start with Sri Lanka, and what you see happening in Sri Lanka is that Sri Lanka is having a domestic consumption, but also they export a certain quantum to India, and the price in India are higher than the world market. So what you see is that there is an export incentive to export to India because they can pay a higher price than the rest of the world. Sri Lanka, the pepper from Sri Lanka which is moving to Europe is what I have seen mainly organic pepper. They have done a pretty good job in that because the white pepper as well as the black pepper, organic from Sri Lanka to Europe are a pretty high level. So that business runs successfully. So the success for Sri Lanka is to look in added value to Europe because of higher raw material prices in Sri Lanka. So that's the answer on that question. If you want me to answer the other question, how can small exporters export to Europe? To start with, our main criteria for pepper is that it is EU compliant, that it is meeting the law. That's the most important thing, because if it would not meet the law, then we can't import it. So if the product is meeting the requirements and we can do testing by laboratories, etc., then to start with, if you have a container, let's say 15 tons, a 20-foot container, which customer might be interested in that? And I think you will make more chance by selling to small importers who have the possibility to upgrade the product, to steam sterilize it, to further clean it. They will be the first one to accept your product. All these large companies mentioned by Arthur, they have certain requirements, and they have set up, by example, if you look at Fuchs, they have set up their own company in Brazil. They have set up a collaboration in Cambodia. So they have their own sources of importing material, and it might not be open for a new supplier. Germany is the largest market. Many European spice companies, they don't like to import at all because they have this legal requirements which are tough. So they don't want to get involved in that. So they leave this to a number of importers, number of traders who do that for them. So my advice is, if you want to get started with small quantities, and you don't have a buyer yet, then try to focus on the importers. If you have more time and more financial power, and you really want to set up a project from scratch and have this done with by example certification or organic, then you might try to find someone who wants to sponsor you on this, who wants to adopt you. And then you can work with the large companies, but then you have to think about projects like also mentioned the Spicer program of Verstegen in Indonesia. Then you need to go for these kind of companies who want to help you in this and who have for which the price is not the most important thing, but who have the time and manpower to help you becoming a successful exporter to Europe.
So a step-by-step approach would be your advice, Gerald. Clear. And before I hand over to Paul, because I know you also want to react, just one part of the question still. Companies usually don't reply to emails. Would smaller companies, would that be the best way to approach them, by sending an email? Gerald?
No, I get so many calls. Then I get calls from India, and then these people are located in Mumbai or New Delhi, who are far away from the pepper belt, and then they call and said, "Oh, you are importing pepper. Can we supply pepper to you?" What Paul was saying also in his presentation, the customer wants a kind of traceability. They want to know, where is the pepper coming from? So when you're a trader in India or a trader in whatever country, and you're not a producer of pepper, it's not going to be easy anymore to sell your pepper to Europe. So when you're a producer, it's another story. And then if you have the right story and you do a little bit of how do you say that, investigation, and you prepare everything, you know what the customers want to hear. When you are a producer, show that you are producing pepper, show your farms, show what you have in place, show what you can do, tell a story, and then you will have interest and people will reply to you. But if you just send an email without any background information, then there's a chance that people don't reply to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Paul, would you like to add, because you were also looking to share on this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gerald told already quite a bit. I think it's very good to, when you have something special in pepper, to present it to buyers in Europe, and probably that is best to talk to special importers who are linked to buyers into Europe, instead of direct maybe to large customers. Or maybe you have to find niche customers who could be interested in something special. But what is also in particular, I have some experience with Sri Lanka, is quite important, the reliability in supply. And when you make a connection with a European buyer and develop something special together with your European customer, it cannot be that the one year you are able to supply him and the next year you supply your pepper to India because you get a better price in India, and the European customer is without product. So please note, reliability in supply in the spice supply chain is very important, in my opinion. It's about relations for many years and sometimes decades.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think also, because we do get questions on the source, so I think I would like to ask Gerald and Paul to react on one more country, Nigeria. How do you view Nigeria? And is white label an option for Nigeria? Who would like to go first? Or do you not have any experience with Nigeria? That could be, of course, even if you have extensive experience.
If I can mention something, you want Paul, or should I mention?
You can go first, Gerald. Or Paul.
No, I mean Nigeria. I've been there a few times, and a fantastic country. But as far as I know, they don't export black pepper. I have not seen it, and I know that Nigeria likes spices. I mean, Nigeria is known, by example, for exporting ginger quite a bit, but I have not seen them as a pepper exporter.
And you, Paul?
No, I agree with Gerald. I also have been in Nigeria, and I think they are even a pepper importer instead of a pepper exporter. But I don't know. I don't have details about that, to be honest. But it's a huge market in Africa, and a huge growing market, of course, which should not be acknowledged. I think it's a big market, one of the largest African markets, and with pepper production growing in Africa, I think Nigeria is important.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. At least it tells us what the impressions are in Europe from your point of view. So let's move on to a completely different topic. Gerald, I'll start with you again. Any suggestions for sources of good pepper seeds for planting?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, there are different varieties of pepper, and you have to look at the climatical conditions and the soil conditions, which variety is performing the best. I don't have this knowledge, but I would recommend find a good agronomist who can help you on that. Most of the pepper exporting countries, they have their own, let's say, I mean, universities, but also technical people who can help them on that. India is having it. I mean, I know that Indonesia is having it. The smaller countries might be more of a challenge, but you have to look properly at which variety works the best for the local conditions.
Mm-hmm. And Aleksandar, is this something you wanted to add to, or no? Then I misunderstood.
Nothing actually. Yeah, nothing. Yeah, just I think that it is important to have like very good young planting material which is virus free when you want to establish your own Blackpepper plantation.
Yeah. And then we have another question. So let's just continue with now it's about the Cameroonian Pena pepper. It is a single origin pepper. And how can you make it more known in Europe? Which way would be the best way to go? Which types, which markets and types of companies would it be easier to target? So it might be that there's an overlap with what you have already said, but if that is the case, please also relate it to this information. And Paul, perhaps you would like to start with this one?
Yes, and to be honest with you, I heard just recently about this GI pepper from Cameroon and geographically identified, and I think it's the first pepper on the world which got a GI identification, and that's I think an excellent way to differentiate yourself from the commodity pepper and to market it as a premium product. And this is one of the niche products I think you can find a market for in Europe, because there will be customers who want to differentiate themselves. If the taste profile is different, if there is really some fundamentals behind the product why it's different, and you are able to market it, I think you have an excellent proposition, and there should be a market for a product like this, maybe not only in Europe, but also in Japan or other high-end markets. I think it's a very nice development, and they should look for special buyers in Europe who could be interested in it, which is maybe a long track. I mean, it's maybe not easy. It's easier to sell on price than to market a special product like this. But I think for the long term, they do a good job.
Yeah. Gerald, anything you would like to add to that one?
Now we know by example another one, a GI has approved pepper is Kampong pepper from Cambodia. The French market is using these kind of special items. They have niche products, high end, and they are that's a market to aim at. And I know that Pemba pepper is really doing that. We see a trend. We see a trend in pepper that many customers want to differentiate each other and are looking for special peppers. So that in that way, pepper is not. I mean, pepper's like wine. I mean, each pepper, each origin, each yard is basically having a particular flavor and aroma. And what we see happening is a trend in pepper is that from the retail level, there is a need to differentiate, and they are open for new special origins and special types of pepper.
Okay. And actually, well, the questions just keep coming, which is really nice. And we're trying to pick out the ones with true practical relevance here, because Aleksandar has written down everything in his report, which those who are answered there, we try not to answer here because we're running out of time. But a really practical one also, can the EU accept black pepper with traceability, but without international third-party verification? Gerald, can I pass this one to you also?
It is possible. It is possible. I mean, frankly speaking, if people start in pepper export, they will not have their certification in place yet. But what is needed is that it's important to have a sample drawn, or that sample can be drawn by an independent company, by an independent lab. It's being analyzed, and that's a start to get pepper imported in Europe. Yeah? So it's not that we need pepper which is certified, but it should be pepper which is compliant to start with. And when the size is growing, then we can look at certification, but it is not a must to get started, I would say.
And do you finally, before I hand over to Arthur, also to mention the CBI market information, etc. We mentioned a lot about going stepping stones through smaller importers. do you have a final piece of advice? Where can you find these? Are there any good sites or trade fairs, exhibitors where you can find these not big companies to start off with? And perhaps Gerwald, if I pass this one to you because you've mentioned it also.
Yeah, I would say you can basically track all shipments worldwide. I mean, you can buy data. Who are the importers of pepper? And you can take a subscription, and at least you know where the pepper is moving to and which companies are importing it. The different companies who provide this information. You have to pay for it, but you can get it. At least you know who are the importers, and then you can make a short list for yourself, and and then basically make a connection and start writing to these companies or calling and say this is our proposition.
Exactly, and the country information. Sorry, Paul.
Over, may I add, in addition to this, what Gerwald mentioned, also the ISA, the European Spice Association, and the National Spice Association are often prepared to help you with a list of members which are of interest to contact.
Good one. Thank you very much, Paul, for adding this.
I can just add actually also to refer to CBI website, there is another study which is called How to Find the Buyers in Spices and Herb Sector, and there is a lot of tips also, including links to the national and the European Association, etc. And just to add to upgrade of Gerwald input, actually officially in the European Union, sharing the names and the volumes and prices, etc., is forbidden because of confidentiality. So usually the suppliers of data who is selling to whom are from the spices producing countries, like especially from India, for example. You can see who from India sold to whom. But from inside Europe, it's not possible to have the full list made by European officials, because it's forbidden.
Yeah, I know. It's basically the information on the BLs, which is traded, but you know at least the companies who are importing.
Yes.
Small help.
So brilliant practical tips shared here. There's a bit of research for everyone to do, I think, and we are running late. I will quickly hand over to Arthur from CBI, who I know would like to say a couple of words. And as you've heard already from Aleksandar and everyone, there is a lot of CBI information. And Arthur, I know you want to share some more about that one.
Yes, thank you, Tove. So I've just put on the CBI website on PowerPoint. So our web address is www.cbi.eu/marketinformation. If you decide to go there, and I really recommend that, of course, after this session, you will see that we have about 25 studies. The studies are organized in more or less 3 sections, one about the sector, studies that are interesting as a sector as a whole, for example, the trends or the demand for spices. There's a section on tips, and there's a section on promising export products, among which you will find black pepper. Let me quickly also show you what that looks like on the internet. So here you have Google. There you have the CBI website. So on the CBI website, you go to market information. You scroll a little bit down. There you see your sector, spices and herbs. And on the spices and herbs page, you will see, among other studies, a couple of studies that Aleksandar mentioned during his presentations. I would like to highlight the tips to find buyers. So this is a study where in total you find 10 tips where you can find buyers among those European sector associations that were just mentioned. Another study which was mentioned is tips to do business. So if I'm not mistaken, Aleksandar was mentioning tip number 4, how to send samples. So the way these studies work is that they're all hyperlinks to different chapters. So if you don't have a lot of time and you want to quickly focus on a section, you click on the hyperlink, and here you have it. Let your products speak for you, send samples. And there you will see explained in 10 easy steps how you should send a sample to a European buyer. And the last study I would like to highlight, of course, is the pepper study. You'll find it in the section Promising Export Products. Pepper. I have a few comments to make about this study. Firstly, you'll see the study from 2018, because as we speak at this moment, Aleksandar is finishing the new updated 2021 study. And this study will be published soon in December of this year. So if you would like to get a notification when this study will be published, after this webinar you will get a survey, and in the survey you can indicate that you would like to subscribe to the newsletter. You can also subscribe to the newsletter via the website, via the button subscribe to our newsletter. So those are ways to keep up to date and to get the latest information. Of course, we will also share the slides of today's presentations with you. And with that, we've come almost to the end of the webinar. So before I hand back the word to Tove, I would like to thank our panel, Aleksandar, Paul and Gerald, for the valuable insights that you've given us today. And I would like to thank you, our audience, very much for attending. Back to you, Tove.
And now unmuted. Thank you very much, Arthur. And now indeed, yes, this is all we have time for today. Thank you, audience, for being so active. I hope we managed to answer the most pressing questions. Thank you, Arthur, for showing exactly where we can find the information on the CBI website. Thank you also, CBI and Arthur, for hosting this webinar, for making it possible. And indeed, from my part also, Aleksandar, Gerald, and Paul, so happy you could join in and share all your practical experience with our audience today. So please do fill out the survey that Arthur mentioned. Also check out all the information on the CBI website. That's it for now for all of us. So thank you very much and have a good day, and hope to see you again in one of the CBI webinars.